The Lion Keeper Attack. In December 1852, the London Zoo was one of the most famous zoological parks in the world. Visitors came from across the city to see animals they had never seen before. Among the most popular attractions were the lions. At the time, zoo safety was very different from what it is today. Keepers regularly entered the cages to clean them or feed the animals. Protective barriers, remote doors, and modern safety systems simply did not exist yet. One of the keepers working at the zoo was a man named Thomas McCarthy. On the morning of December 26, 1852, McCarthy entered the lion enclosure to perform routine cleaning. The lion inside the cage had been calm moments earlier, and the task was something keepers had done countless times before. But as soon as McCarthy stepped fully into the enclosure, the animal suddenly lunged. The lion knocked him to the ground and began mauling him inside the cage. Other zoo employees nearby heard the commotion and rushed toward the enclosure, shouting and attempting to drive the animal away. Eventually, they managed to force the lion back and pull McCarthy out, but the injuries were catastrophic. Despite attempts to help him, Thomas McCarthy died shortly afterward from his wounds. The attack shocked the public and quickly spread through newspapers across Britain. It became one of the earliest recorded fatalities involving a zookeeper and highlighted the enormous dangers faced by people working directly with large predators. The tiger escape. On December 25, 2007, the San Francisco Zoo was crowded with visitors enjoying the Christmas holiday. Among the zoo's most dangerous residents was a Siberian tiger named Tatiana. Weighing over 300 pounds, she was one of the largest predators in the park. Her enclosure was surrounded by a concrete wall and a dry moat designed to keep the animal contained. But something about the enclosure had been underestimated. That evening, shortly before closing time, Tatiana managed to leap over the wall of her enclosure, escaping into the zoo grounds. Investigators later determined the barrier was lower than recommended for an animal capable of jumping incredible distances. Once outside, the tiger moved through the dark pathways of the zoo. 3 young men were still inside the park when the tiger encountered them. Within seconds, Tatiana attacked. The first victim, Carlos Souza Jr., 17 years old, was knocked to the ground and fatally mauled. The 2 other young men ran through the zoo, trying to escape while the tiger chased them. Both managed to reach a service building and lock themselves inside. Police officers arrived shortly afterward and searched the zoo grounds for the animal. When they located Tatiana near the building, she charged toward them. Officers opened fire and shot the tiger dead. The incident shocked the country and raised serious questions about the zoo's safety design, particularly the height of the enclosure walls that had allowed the tiger to escape. The Zoo Fire Tragedy. On Christmas Eve 1995, the Philadelphia Zoo was quiet. The park had already closed for the night, and only a few employees remained on site. Inside one of the buildings known as the World of Primates, dozens of monkeys and apes were housed in indoor enclosures designed to protect them from the cold winter weather. Sometime during the night, a fire suddenly broke out inside the building. The flames spread quickly through the structure, filling the interior with thick smoke. Fire alarms began sounding across the zoo as security staff rushed toward the building. One of the employees working that night was Scott Dunlap, a zookeeper responsible for caring for many of the animals inside. As the fire intensified, Dunlap ran into the building, attempting to reach the enclosures and help the trapped animals. But the situation deteriorated rapidly. The smoke inside the building became extremely toxic, and visibility dropped to almost nothing. Firefighters arriving at the scene struggled to enter the structure as the fire continued spreading through the interior. When emergency crews finally managed to reach the inside of the building, they found Dunlap unconscious. He had been overcome by the smoke while trying to reach the animals. Despite rescue efforts, Scott Dunlap died from smoke inhalation. The fire also killed several animals inside the building. Investigators later determined the blaze had likely started due to an electrical problem. The tragedy led to major changes in fire prevention systems and emergency planning in zoos across the United States. The elephant keeper death. In October 2005, the Berlin Zoo in Germany was operating as usual. One of the most impressive areas of the zoo was the elephant enclosure, home to several large Asian elephants. Elephants are intelligent animals, but they are also incredibly powerful. An adult elephant can weigh more than 5 tons, making even a small movement potentially deadly. One of the keepers working with the elephants that day was Thomas Dörflein, an experienced handler who had spent years caring for the animals. During routine work inside the enclosure, something suddenly went wrong. One of the elephants became agitated and charged toward him. The massive animal knocked Dörflein to the ground and began striking him with its trunk and feet. Other zoo employees rushed to the scene and attempted to distract the elephant, shouting and using tools to push the animal away, but the attack happened in seconds. By the time they managed to intervene, the injuries were already catastrophic. Emergency responders arrived quickly, but Thomas Dürflein died at the scene. The incident shocked zoo staff and visitors alike, serving as another reminder of the extreme danger faced by people working closely with some of the world's largest animals. The Bear Enclosure Attack. On October 25, 2009, the Bear Park in Bern, Switzerland was open to visitors enjoying a calm autumn afternoon. The park, located along the Aire River, housed several large brown bears, animals that could weigh more than 300 kilograms. The enclosure had been carefully designed with deep moats and barriers to prevent anyone from entering the habitat. But that afternoon, a 25-year-old man suddenly climbed over the protective fence and dropped down into the bear enclosure. Witnesses later said the man appeared calm at first as he walked inside the habitat, only a short distance away from the animals. Within seconds, the bears noticed him. 3 brown bears began moving toward the intruder. What had been a quiet zoo visit instantly turned into chaos as visitors began shouting and alerting zoo staff. Before anyone could stop him, the man was already standing directly inside the animal's territory. One of the bears rushed forward and knocked him to the ground. The other bears joined the attack, biting and clawing at him while dozens of shocked visitors watched from the viewing platforms above. Zookeepers immediately triggered emergency protocols. They used loud noises and rubber bullets in an attempt to scare the bears away from the victim. After several tense moments, the animals finally retreated far enough for staff to enter the enclosure. The man was pulled out alive, but critically injured. He was rushed to a hospital in Bern with severe trauma caused by the attack. Despite emergency treatment, he died later that evening from his injuries. The incident raised serious questions about zoo security and how the man had managed to climb over multiple barriers to reach one of the most dangerous enclosures in the park. The white tiger killing. On September 23, 2014, the Delhi Zoo in India was crowded with visitors enjoying a typical afternoon at the park. One of the zoo's most popular attractions was the enclosure housing a white tiger, a rare and powerful predator capable of killing large animals in seconds. That afternoon, a 20-year-old man named Maksud Khan was standing near the barrier surrounding the tiger enclosure. Witnesses later said he appeared to be leaning over the railing while looking down into the habitat. At some point, Khan lost his balance. He fell from the viewing area directly into the enclosure below. The drop stunned him, but he was still alive. The tiger, named Vijay, quickly noticed the unexpected movement inside its territory and slowly approached the fallen man. For several minutes, the situation remained tense, but strangely still. Visitors began screaming and shouting from above. Some threw objects and stones into the enclosure in an attempt to scare the tiger away. Instead, the chaos seemed to agitate the animal. Suddenly, the tiger lunged. It grabbed Khan with its jaws and dragged him across the enclosure as dozens of horrified visitors watched helplessly from above. Zoo staff rushed to the scene and attempted to distract the tiger using sticks and loud noises, but the enclosure design made it extremely difficult to intervene quickly. By the time keepers managed to pull the animal away, Maksud Khan had already suffered fatal injuries. The incident sparked intense debate across India about zoo safety, crowd behavior, and whether visitors throwing objects may have provoked the tiger into attacking. The Zoo Worker Electrocuted. In 1971, the Chester Zoo in England was expanding several of its animal enclosures. Many of the habitats relied on electric perimeter fences designed to prevent dangerous animals from escaping. These systems delivered high-voltage shocks strong enough to deter large animals, such as big cats or primates, while normally remaining safe for trained staff who understood how to shut the system down during maintenance. One of the workers responsible for maintaining these systems was Peter Evans, an experienced zoo electrician who had been working on the park's infrastructure for several years. On the day of the accident, Evans was assigned to repair part of the electrical system connected to one of the animal enclosures. To perform the repair safely, the fence was supposed to be fully powered down before anyone approached the wiring. But something went wrong. While Evans was working near the electrical line, the circuit suddenly became live again. Investigators later suspected a miscommunication between staff members who believed the system had already been shut off. The moment the current returned, the exposed cable delivered a powerful electric shock. Evans was thrown violently backward by the voltage, collapsing near the fence. Other employees rushed to the scene and immediately cut the power supply. Emergency services were called, but the shock had already caused catastrophic damage. Despite attempts to revive him, Peter Evans died at the scene from electrocution. The accident led to major changes in how zoos handled electrical systems, including stricter lockout procedures designed to ensure that power could not be accidentally restored while workers were still performing maintenance. The crocodile selfie death. In April 2019, visitors at the Kabug Mangrove Park and Wetlands Zoo in Zamboanga, Sibugay, Philippines, were watching one of the park's most unusual attractions. Inside a shallow concrete enclosure lived a large saltwater crocodile named Lele. The reptile often stayed completely still for long periods, barely moving as visitors gathered nearby to take photos. That afternoon, a 29-year-old visitor named Rene Cardona approached the enclosure. Several witnesses later said Cardona believed the crocodile was not real. Because the animal had remained motionless for so long, he assumed it was some kind of decorative statue placed in the enclosure. Ignoring warning signs and barriers, Cardona climbed over the fence and dropped into the habitat. Visitors nearby began shouting, realizing immediately how dangerous the situation was. But Cardona continued walking toward the crocodile, pulling out his phone to take a selfie beside what he thought was a harmless display. As he moved closer, the crocodile suddenly reacted. In a split second, the animal lunged forward and clamped its jaws around Cardona's arm. The powerful reptile immediately began performing what crocodiles are known for as a death roll, spinning violently to tear apart its prey. Panic spread among the crowd as the attack continued inside the enclosure. Zoo staff rushed to the scene and tried to distract the crocodile, eventually striking the animal with a concrete block to force it to release the victim. After nearly half an hour, rescuers managed to pull Cardona from the enclosure, but the injuries were catastrophic. Rene Cardona died shortly afterward from severe blood loss and trauma, bringing a tragic end to an incident that began with a simple attempt to take a photo. And that brings us to the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to leave a like and help boost the video. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. See you soon. Bye.